That promotion you bled for, the one that cost you nights of sleep and strained your alliances. That rival you finally outmaneuvered, forcing them into a corner from which they could not escape. You felt the surge of victory, the satisfaction of a well-played game. But what if I told you that victory was not your own? What if the corner you forced your rival into was in fact the exact destination their true master intended for them, and that your promotion was merely the reward for moving a piece exactly as the architect of the board desired? You believe you live in a world of choices, a grand marketplace of opportunities where reason, will, and hard work determine your trajectory. You spend your days weighing options, crafting strategies, and reacting to the moves of others. You create lists of pros and cons, you analyze market data, you forecast the behavior of your competitors. When presented with path A and path B, you apply your intellect to determine which is the superior route. And when you succeed, you credit your own shrewd judgment. When you fail, you lament an unforeseen variable, a miscalculation in a complex but fundamentally rational system. This belief, this deeply held faith in your own agency, is the most sophisticated prison ever designed. It is a cell whose walls are invisible, whose bars are forged from your own vanity. You are so proud of how skillfully you navigate the maze that you never stop to ask who built the walls. Every day you react to an email from a superior, a shift in public opinion, a new technology that threatens your industry, a personal slight from a colleague. Your energy, your formidable intellect, your ambition, all of it is consumed in the act of response. You are a master problem solver, a virtuoso of adaptation. But you are solving problems that others have set before you. You are adapting to a reality that others have defined. The man who spends his life becoming the world's greatest swordsman is still just a man with a sword, and he will be commanded by the king who pays his wages. His skill is a tool, but the purpose it serves is not his own. This is the state of the reactive man. He is a tool, even when he believes himself to be the hand that wields it. He is a participant in a game whose rules he did not write, played on a board he did not design, for a prize he does not truly understand. He sees a finite set of options, and in choosing between them feels the illusion of control. This is the highest form of servitude, to be a willing and enthusiastic slave who believes himself to be free. Now let us discard this comforting illusion and speak of power as it truly is. Let us consult the man who stripped away the moral drapery of the world and examine the cold, hard machinery beneath, Niccolo Machiavelli. He understood a fundamental truth of the human animal, a truth so profound that it governs the rise and fall of empires and the fate of every individual within them. He wrote, "Men never do good, except by necessity." Read those words again. Not by choice, not by virtue, not by altruism, by necessity. The common man is a creature of circumstance, a river that will always follow the path of least resistance unless its banks are forcefully reshaped. He will remain passive until inaction becomes more painful than action. He will remain loyal until betrayal becomes more profitable. He will follow the rules until breaking them becomes essential for his survival. The idealist, the fool, attempts to appeal to the better nature of this creature. He speaks of morality, of shared values, of the common good. He tries to persuade. The prince, the true strategist, knows this is a waste of breath. The prince does not persuade, he engineers. He does not ask for cooperation. He creates the circumstances in which cooperation is the only logical choice. He does not hope for loyalty. He builds a system where disloyalty is professional suicide. He is not a player in the game. He is the architect of the game itself. He understands that true power is not found in choosing the best option. True power lies in being the one who frames and presents the options to others. This is the art of becoming the architect of dilemmas. You do not react to the world. You create a world to which others must react. Consider a general facing an enemy army on an open plain. The reactive general would study the terrain, analyze his opponent's strength, and devise a clever tactic to win a fair fight. He is reacting to the situation as presented. The Machiavellian general, however, finds this foolish. Why engage in a contest of equals where fortune may betray you? Instead, he sends a small force to divert a river, flooding the valley where the enemy camps. He does not attack them. He simply changes their reality. Now the enemy is not faced with a battle, but a dilemma of his creation. Drown in the rising waters or flee into the high ground, a narrow mountain pass where the prince's army is already waiting in ambush. Did the enemy general choose to enter the trap? Yes. He weighed his options, certain death by water or a chance of survival by combat, and made a rational decision. But the options themselves were a fiction, a carefully constructed scenario designed to produce one and only one outcome. The enemy general felt the weight of command, the burden of choice, but his will was irrelevant. He was already a ghost, dancing to a song he could not hear. This is the nature of true agency. You must stop seeing the world as a series of events to which you must respond. You must begin to see it as a canvas, a block of marble, a raw material that you will shape according to your will. The first step is to recognize the moments where you are reacting. The urgent email is not a problem to be solved. It is a test of your priorities, an attempt by another to impose their timeline onto yours. The competitor's new product is not a threat to be matched. It is an opportunity to redefine the entire market, to make their innovation irrelevant, by creating a new category they are not equipped to enter. You must see every external event not as a dictate, but as a piece of information, a clue to the intentions and weaknesses of others. Weaknesses you will now use to build the necessities that will compel their behavior. The power you seek is not in the strength of your response, but in the audacity of your action. It is the power to set the agenda, to define the problem, to create the crisis to which everyone else, in their frantic and predictable panic, will react in precisely the way you foresaw. This requires a profound internal shift, a divorce from the pleasant fiction that we are all free agents in a benevolent system. You must accept that you are in a labyrinth. Your only choice is whether you will be one of the rats, endlessly searching for the cheese at the end of a predetermined path, or if you will be the one who designs the walls, who places the cheese, and who watches from above with dispassionate understanding. For the freedom of a common man ends where the necessity created by a prince begins. The majority live their entire lives reacting to problems, both real and imagined. The few who rule this world are those who have mastered the dark art of manufacturing the problems that demand the very solutions they have been waiting to provide. For the love of one's subjects is a bond of obligation, which men, being wretched creatures, break when it is to their advantage to do so. But fear is strengthened by a dread of punishment, which is always effective. A prince must therefore lay his foundations on what is his own, not on what is not his. He must control the options. Comment "I control the options" to free yourself from this illusion, and subscribe to learn how to draw the labyrinth. You have awakened to the nature of your confinement. You now see the invisible walls of the labyrinth. You perceive the calculated placement of every reward and every punishment. Acknowledging the prison is the first step toward freedom, but it is a useless revelation if you do not then learn the craft of the architect. How does a man of will begin to impose his own design upon the world? How does one transition from being a piece on the board to the hand that moves all pieces? The process does not begin with an outward act of aggression or a grand public declaration. It begins with the silent, painstaking construction of an unbreachable foundation. The first pillar of your new reality is the establishment of absolute autonomy. You must build your fortress on what is yours and yours alone. Machiavelli reserved his deepest contempt for the princes who relied on the arms of others. He saw mercenaries as faithless and cowardly, driven only by coin, ready to abandon you at the first sign of real danger. He saw auxiliaries, the forces of a powerful ally, as even more perilous, for if they lose, you are ruined, and if they win, you become their prisoner. This ancient warning is not about military strategy. It is the most vital metaphor for power in any domain. The arms of others are all around you. They are the validation you seek from your peers, the financial backing you accept that comes with another's agenda, the public opinion you court, the loyalty of a subordinate who serves you only because you currently offer the best terms. To build your power upon any of these is to build your castle upon the deck of another man's ship. You may feel secure in the calm, but you do not control the vessel. You do not set its course, and you will go down with it in the storm. The first act of forcing the world to react to you is to make yourself a cause, not an effect. This requires you to cultivate a power that is entirely your own. It is a resource, a skill, a body of knowledge so profound and so rare that it cannot be easily replicated or outsourced. It is the deep understanding of a system that allows you to predict its movements. It is the control of a critical asset that others must, however reluctantly, come to you for. It is the cultivation of a personal force of will so unwavering that it becomes a constant in a world of variables. When your power is derived from what you are and what you control, rather than who you know or who supports you, the dynamic of every interaction shifts. You cease to be a supplicant. You are no longer one of many voices vying for attention. You become a destination. You become a center of gravity. Others do not engage with you as an equal. They orbit you. They must react to your position because your existence is a fact of their landscape. A mountain they must either climb or circumvent, but which they can never ignore. Stop investing your energy in networks of fickle allegiance and start forging the weapons that only you can wield. A man who begs for a seat at the table will always be at the mercy of the host. A man who can build a better table will soon find everyone clamoring for an invitation. Once your foundation is secure, built on the bedrock of your own capabilities, you can erect the second pillar, the systematic re-engineering of human behavior through the economy of fear. The sentimentalist will tell you it is better to be loved than feared. The idealist believes that inspiration is the greatest motivator. These are the comforting lullabies sung to children and fools. Machiavelli, a student of reality, understood that love is a transactional emotion maintained by a continuous chain of benefits. The moment you cease to provide, the bond dissolves. Love is a currency that must be spent daily. Fear, however, is an investment. Specifically, the dread of a known consequence is the most reliable tool for shaping the conduct of men. It is a silent guardian that patrols the minds of your subordinates, your rivals and your allies long after you have left the room. But we are not speaking of brutish intimidation or random acts of terror. That is the method of the common thug, and it only breeds hatred, which is the seed of rebellion. Hatred is born from cruelty that is prolonged, rapacious, and erratic. When you seize a man's property, dishonor his family, or inflict continuous, unpredictable punishments, you leave him with nothing to lose, and such a man is the most dangerous enemy of all. The Machiavellian use of fear is something else entirely. It is a science. It is an economy. The goal is to achieve the maximum psychological and behavioral impact with the minimum expenditure of force. It is the application of cruelty that is, in his famous words, well used. Well-used cruelty has three defining characteristics. First, it is committed all at once in a single decisive stroke. It is not a lingering campaign of terror, but a sudden, shocking thunderstorm that clears the air. Second, its purpose is to secure one's position and establish a new order, not to indulge a personal appetite for vengeance. Third, once the act is done, it is not repeated, and the ruler then turns to distributing benefits to the populace. The injury must be so swift and so total that the subject is too stunned and disoriented to retaliate, and the ensuing calm and generosity makes the memory of that violence fade into a legendary cautionary tale. It becomes a boundary marker, a line etched into the collective consciousness. One decisive surgical act of severity against a single transgressor can recalibrate the risk calculations of 1,000 observers. You are not merely punishing a past action, you are aggressively preempting countless future ones. You are forcing every single person in your sphere of influence to react to a new, non-negotiable term of their reality. Let us transpose this from the realm of principalities to a modern office. Imagine a manager who inherits a talented but undisciplined team. Deadlines are treated as suggestions. Punctuality is arbitrary. A quiet culture of mediocrity has taken root. The reactive manager, the idealist, would call a meeting. He would give a speech about excellence and teamwork. He would implement a new tracking system. He would offer incentives. He is trying to persuade, to inspire, to bribe. He is reacting to the problem with the tools of the weak. Weeks later, he will find that nothing has fundamentally changed. Now, observe the prince. He spends his first month in silent observation. He does not issue warnings or deliver speeches. He is assessing the terrain and building his foundation, demonstrating his own impeccable competence and securing the unconditional support of his own superiors. His power is now his own. It does not depend on the consensus of the team he intends to command. During this time, he identifies the center of the cultural rot, not necessarily the worst performer, but the most influential and visible purveyor of the old, lazy standard. He then waits with the patience of a predator for a clear, public, and undeniable violation of protocol. When it occurs, he does not call the individual into his office for a private reprimand. He acts. The employee is terminated immediately and publicly. The reason given is not a vague corporate platitude, but a cold, factual recitation of the specific failure. It is an act of shocking, surgical cruelty. The effect is not anger or outrage. The effect is silence. A profound contemplative silence falls over the entire department. In that moment, every other employee is not reacting to the fate of their colleague. They are reacting to the sudden, terrifying clarity of their own situation. The manager has, in a single stroke, vaporized the old reality and replaced it with a new one. The new reality has one simple, unspoken law. The standard is absolute, and the consequence for failing to meet it is political death. The next morning, everyone arrives early. Deadlines are met without question. The quality of work improves overnight. The manager did not persuade a single person. He did not need to. He authored a new reality, and he forced an entire group of people to react to its unyielding physics. He used one man's ruin to purchase the compliance of all the others. That is the economy of fear. That is the architecture of imposed will. You have laid the foundations of your own power, independent of the fickle will of others. You have learned to wield fear, not as a blunt instrument of terror, but as a scalpel to excise dissent and recalibrate the calculations of men. These are the external mechanics of control, the levers you pull to move the world. But the most profound work of the architect is internal. Before you can impose a new reality upon others, you must first wage a war against yourself. You must conquer the most treacherous and seductive of all territories, your own human need for affection, your ingrained desire for approval, and your paralyzing fear of being misunderstood. The world will never orbit a sun that is uncertain of its own heat. This is the great internal battle, the cultivation of a calculated and profound indifference. We are social creatures, conditioned from birth to seek consensus and avoid ostracism. This instinct, while useful for survival within a herd, is a fatal flaw for anyone who wishes to command it. The desire to be liked is a chain that shackles you to the expectations of the lowest common denominator. It forces you to soften your decisions, to dilute your vision, to compromise in moments that demand absolute resolve. The aspiring prince who worries whether his subjects love him is like a shepherd who asks his sheep for permission to lead them away from a wolf. He is negotiating with the very elements he is meant to command. The true prince understands that the reactions of others, their praise, their criticism, their love, their hatred, are merely data. They are the predictable and ultimately irrelevant emissions of lesser bodies caught in the pull of his own gravitational field. You must become a star. A star does not ask the planets for their opinion. It does not adjust its course based on their trajectory. It simply exists, radiating immense, unchangeable force. Its very consistency creates the laws of physics for the entire system. Planets orbit not out of affection or loyalty, but because it is an inescapable reality of their existence. The star's gravity is a fact. This is the mental state you must achieve. Your vision, your standards, your will, these must become your internal constants. You must detach your ego from the outcomes of your actions. When you engineer a dilemma and force a rival's hand, he may call you a tyrant. When you perform an act of surgical cruelty to establish a new order, those who benefited from the old one will call you a monster. You must learn to hear these labels as you would hear the sound of the wind. They are phenomena, not judgments. The first and most critical reality you impose is upon yourself, the reality that their feelings do not matter. The only thing that matters is the stability and perpetuation of the system you are building. This coldness is not a product of malice, it is a prerequisite of command. It is the serene, detached focus of a master architect who is concerned only with the integrity of his structure, not with the opinions of the stones. Once this internal fortress is built, you can begin to project its power outward, not through action, but through the deliberate construction of your public character. Your reputation is not a passive reflection of who you are. It is the most active and powerful weapon in your arsenal. Machiavelli famously noted that men in general judge more by the eyes than by the hands, because everyone can see, but few can feel. Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. This is not a lament, it is a tactical blueprint. Your true self, your doubts, your calculations, your necessary cruelties, these belong to the shadows. Your public self, the persona you project, must be a masterpiece of political theater, designed to elicit precisely the reactions you desire. The goal is not simply to appear virtuous in the conventional sense. A reputation for kindness alone invites parasites. A reputation for generosity without strength invites exploitation. Instead, you must forge a reputation that becomes an active force, a ghost that sits in every room and influences every decision, even when you are absent. You must become known as a man whose word once given is an immutable bond. You must become known as a man who repays favors with extravagant generosity, creating a network of obligation that ensnares even the most cynical. Simultaneously, you must be known as a man who retaliates against any slight, any betrayal, with a disproportionate and terrifying certainty. Not out of anger, for anger is a loss of control, but with the cold, predictable precision of a law of nature. When these qualities are established, your reputation begins to do your work for you. Rivals will hesitate to move against you, not because they have assessed your current strength, but because they are reacting to the legend of your past vengeances. Potential allies will flock to you, not because they are inspired by your vision, but because they are reacting to the widely circulated stories of your immense loyalty to your followers. Your subordinates will perform their duties with meticulous care, not because they are being watched, but because they are reacting to the internalized knowledge of your absolute intolerance for failure. You force the world to react not to your immediate presence, but to the powerful and carefully curated idea of you. You have transcended being a mere man of action. You have become a symbol. And symbols hold a power over the human imagination that no single man ever could. This leads to the ultimate performance, the theater of inevitability. Every public move you make must be imbued with an aura of serene, unhurried deliberation. You must project an absolute confidence, not of the arrogant boaster, but of the master chess player who sees the entire board and is merely executing a sequence of moves whose outcome was decided long ago. Never appear to be scrambling, never seem surprised, never allow the world to see you react in haste. Even when faced with a genuine crisis or an unforeseen event, a moment of Fortuna's rebellion, your public response must be one of calm, calculated adaptation. You must frame the event not as a setback, but as a foreseen contingency, a minor turbulence for which you were always prepared. This performance creates a powerful psychological effect. Your opponents, witnessing your unflappable composure, will begin to doubt their own strategies. Did he anticipate this? Is this part of his plan? Am I walking into a larger trap? Your allies, seeing your steady hand at the helm, will have their own resolve strengthened. The masses, who crave stability above all else, will see in you a figure of strength, a bulwark against the chaos of the world. By consistently acting as if you are in complete control, you hypnotize the world into believing that you are. People stop questioning your moves and start trying to decipher them, assuming a grander strategy that may or may not even exist. They cease to act on their own initiative and begin to react to what they perceive your initiative to be. You have weaponized their own imaginations against them. You have made your will seem synonymous with the march of fate itself. You are no longer just a man imposing his reality. You have become the very definition of reality for everyone around you. You have learned to architect dilemmas, to build your power upon an unshakable foundation, and to transform your reputation into a law of nature. Now, before we reveal how to cement your will into the very fabric of the world, ensure you are subscribed, for the ultimate wisdom is reserved for those who dare to build legacies, not just win battles. You have mastered the forces of perception and psychology, but a perception, however masterful, is still just a shadow. A reputation, however fearsome, can still fade with time. The final supreme act of the prince is to transmute his personal, mortal power into an immortal, impersonal system. The ultimate goal is not to be the strongest player in the game forever. It is to create a game that, by its very design, ensures your principles and your lineage will always win. This is the transition from ruler to founder, from commander to lawgiver. It is the moment of the masterstroke, which is not an act of violence but an act of creation. Machiavelli observed that the most durable principalities are those established not by fortune or by the arms of others, but by one's own ability through the introduction of new orders and institutions. He held Moses, Cyrus, Romulus, and Theseus in the highest esteem, not for their battlefield victories, but because they were armed prophets who introduced new laws and customs that outlived them by centuries. They did not just conquer a people, they remade them. This is your final objective, to transform your will from a personal attribute into a structural reality. The execution of this founding act requires an exquisite sense of timing. It is the culmination of all your previous efforts. Having established your reputation for decisiveness and foresight, and having engineered a situation of necessity, you will find a moment of profound crisis, either one that fortune provides, or more likely, one you have discreetly manufactured. In this moment of chaos and fear, when the old ways have clearly failed and people crave order above all else, you do not offer a temporary solution. You offer a new covenant. You introduce a new constitution, a new corporate charter, a new set of inviolable family traditions. This is the act of the legislator. It is a fundamental rewriting of the rules of engagement. For, as the Florentine teaches, injuries ought to be done all at once so that being tasted less, they offend less. Benefits ought to be given little by little so that the flavor of them may last longer. Your new order is the ultimate injury to the old one, and it must be delivered in a single comprehensive and non-negotiable stroke. This new system must be presented not as an instrument of your ambition, but as a rational, inevitable solution to the preceding chaos. The rules should be clear, the hierarchies defined, and the consequences for transgression embedded into the very code of the institution. You are taking the unwritten laws you established through your reputation, your intolerance for failure, your rewarding of loyalty, and you are codifying them into formal processes. Performance reviews, legal contracts, chains of command, inheritance trusts, these are the modern equivalents of Machiavelli's new orders. They are engines designed to perpetuate a specific set of values and power dynamics long after the emotional heat of their creation has cooled. Your personal authority is now laundered through the impartial machinery of bureaucracy and law. People will no longer feel they are submitting to your will. They will feel they are complying with the neutral logic of the system. It is the most brilliant of all illusions, tyranny disguised as procedure. But creating the machine is not enough. You must ensure it can defend itself. Machiavelli's assertion that all armed prophets have conquered and the unarmed ones have been destroyed is the final, critical piece of the puzzle. To arm your new order, you must do two things. First, you must create a new class of stakeholders who benefit directly and immensely from the new system. Your most loyal lieutenants must be given positions of power within the new structure. Their fortunes, their status, and their very identity must become inextricably linked to the survival of your creation. They will become the high priests and guardians of your new order, defending it with a ferocity they would never muster for you as an individual, because they are now defending themselves. They will enforce your will not out of loyalty, but out of enlightened self-interest, which is the only form of allegiance that can be trusted to endure. Second, you must systematically dismantle or co-opt the power centers of the old regime. Any institution, tradition, or individual who represents a connection to the world before your ascension must be either absorbed into your new structure or rendered obsolete. You must create a new culture with new language, new rituals, and new symbols that reinforce the legitimacy of your order. You rewrite the company's mission statement. You create new annual awards. You celebrate the anniversaries of your founding moments. You are erasing the old history and writing your own. You are conditioning people to see the world through the lens of your creation until the memory of any alternative way of life has faded into myth. The system becomes self-sustaining. The reactions of the people are no longer directed at you, the man, but at the very structure of their reality, a structure that you designed. This is the pinnacle of power. It is the quiet, humming perfection of a machine you built, which now runs on its own. It is the power to step away and watch as the gears turn, as individuals rise and fall, as ambitions clash and are resolved, all according to the logic and the pathways you laid down. You have achieved a form of political immortality. Your will has been objectified, turned into an environment, a climate, an ecosystem. The world is no longer reacting to your actions. The world is a reaction to your foundational act. You have not merely forced the world to react to you, you have become the silent, ever-present cause of its every reaction. The final philosophical truth, then, is this. The greatest power is not wielded but embedded. It is not the power of the king who shouts commands, but the power of the lawgiver who writes the text that all future kings must obey. The ultimate expression of will is to create a system so complete and self-regulating that your own presence becomes unnecessary. It is the difference between being a celebrated actor on the stage and being the playwright who wrote the script that will be performed for generations. To be reactive is to be a mortal character, buffeted by the plot. To force the world to react to you is to seize the pen, to author the story, and to create a stage where all future actors, knowingly or not, will speak your lines. This is the final art of the prince, not merely to rule the world, but to become its architect, to build a throne that endures long after the king is gone.